Hello, I am Editor Than Mai. I will provide you with the latest information of the day. UN conference backs two-state solution, calls on Israel to commit to a Palestinian state. High-level representatives at a UN conference on Tuesday urged Israel to commit to a Palestinian state and gave unwavering support to a two-state solution, signaling widespread international determination to end one of the world's longest conflicts. The New York Declaration sets out a phased plan to end the nearly 8-decade conflict and the ongoing war in Gaza. The plan would culminate with an independent, demilitarized Palestine living side by side peacefully with Israel, and their eventual integration into the wider Mideast region. The meeting is taking place amid the latest reports that starvation and famine are taking place in Gaza, and growing global outrage at Palestinians not getting food due to Israeli policies and practices, which Israel denies. Planned for 2 days, the meeting was extended into Wednesday because representatives of about 50 countries have not spoken. Israel rejects the notion of two states. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu opposes a two-state solution and has rejected the meeting on both nationalistic and security grounds. Israel's close ally, the United States, is also boycotting, calling the meeting unproductive and ill-timed. Israel's UN ambassador Danny Danon late Tuesday sharply criticized the some 125 countries participating in the conference, saying there are those in the world who fight terrorists and extremist forces, and then there are those who turn a blind eye to them or resort to appeasement. The conference, which was postponed from June and downgraded from world leaders to ministers, for the first time established 8 high-level working groups to examine and make proposals on wide-ranging topics related to a two-state solution. The declaration's plan says conference co-chairs France and Saudi Arabia, the European Union and Arab League, and 15 countries that led the working groups agreed to take collective action to end the war in Gaza. Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan urged the rest of the 193 UN member nations to support this document before the start of the 80th session of the UN General Assembly in mid-September. The declaration condemns the attacks committed by Hamas against civilians in southern Israel on October 7, 2023. It marks a first condemnation by Arab nations of Hamas, whose attacks killed about 1,200, mainly Israeli civilians, and whose militants took about 250 people hostage. Some 50 are still being held. The declaration condemns Israel's attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure in Gaza, and its siege and starvation, which have produced a devastating humanitarian catastrophe and protection crisis. Israel's offensive against Hamas has killed over 60,000 Palestinians, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, which doesn't distinguish between civilians and combatants. Plan would give Palestinian Authority governing power. The conference plan envisions the Palestinian Authority governing and controlling all Palestinian territory, with a transitional administrative committee immediately established under its umbrella after a ceasefire in Gaza. In the context of ending the war in Gaza, Hamas must end its rule in Gaza and hand over its weapons to the Palestinian Authority. The declaration says it also supports deployment of a temporary international stabilization mission operating under UN auspices to protect Palestinian civilians, support the transfer of security to the Palestinian Authority, and provide security guarantees for Palestine and Israel, including monitoring of the ceasefire and of a future peace agreement. The declaration urges countries to recognize the state of Palestine, calling this an essential and indispensable component of the achievement of the two-state solution. Without naming Israel but clearly referring to it, the document says illegal unilateral actions are posing an existential threat to the realization of the independent state of Palestine. French President Emmanuel Macron announced ahead of the meeting that his country will recognize the state of Palestine at the General Assembly's meeting of world leaders in late September. The French Foreign Ministry on Tuesday pushed back on Israeli claims that recognition of Palestine would reward Hamas, saying that, on the contrary, it has contributed to isolating Hamas. United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced Tuesday that Britain would recognize the state of Palestine before September's meeting, but would refrain if Israel agrees to a ceasefire and long-term peace process in the next 8 weeks. The countries are now the biggest Western powers and the only 2 members of the group of 7 major industrialized nations to make such a pledge. A separate one-page statement titled the New York Call was circulated by France, but the language was considered too strong, especially for Arab nations. It was only approved by 15 Western nations, including 6 that have recognized the state of Palestine and 9 others: Andorra, Australia, Canada, Finland, Luxembourg, Malta, New Zealand, Portugal and San Marino. The statement, issued late Tuesday, says the 15 countries have recognized, expressed the willingness or the positive consideration to recognize the state of Palestine as an essential step towards the 2-state solution, and invite all countries that have not done so to join this call. Please like and subscribe to wait for the next information. Goodbye and see you again.